Welcome back to BioBliss, and today's topic is about cells because cells are the basic unit of life. So let's go right into this video. So BioBliss, and today's topic is about cells. So every question that everyone has about when we're introduced to a topic is, what is the topic? In this case, what are cells? So cells are the basic unit of life in all living things, and they're really, really important because these structures help living things carry the normal activities of life, like breaking down food, our movement, growth, and reproduction. And different cells have different jobs, like plant cells carry water and substances throughout the plant, and white blood cells help fight disease. And here's a picture of how a white blood cell looks like, as just an example. Speaking of cells, there are many different types of cells. Like there's trillions and trillions of cells in our body. And here are just to name a few, like stem cells, bone cells, blood cells, muscle cells, fat cells, skin cells, nerve cells, endothelial cells, pancreatic cells, and cancer cells. And these are just a few examples because there's so many different types of cells in our bodies that interact with each other and try to get the function of us doing normal things every day. So here's what it comes down to, the cell theory. In 1665, scientist Robert Hooke designed his microscope, and he observed tiny box-like things in a thin slice of cork. And these kind of box-like things kind of reminded him of the rooms that were box-like called cells, where the monks lived. So that's why the name cells is and that's how he came up with the name cells. So then around the 1830s, Theodore Schwann and Matthias Sheldon started laying the foundation of the cell theory. And they figured out, number one, all living things are made of one or more cells. So the more complex you are, the more cells you're made of, like humans are more complex than bacteria. Number two, cells are the basic unit of life, as we have said before. And about 20 years later, Robert Remak had said the third statement of the cell theory, and it's all cells are made from pre-existing cells. So what does it mean by pre-existing? Well, pre-existing means from things that were living before as well, right? Where living things are made from living things. That's basically what it's saying. Like, you can't be made from a water bottle, or you can't be made from a table or paper or something. You're made from humans, right? Because you're a human, so you're made from humans. Animals made from an animal, and etc. like that. So cells are made from pre-existing cells, and cells are made from living things are made from other living things. All right, so basic cell structures. So after we discovered what a cell is, scientists, of course, had to go deeper, right? So they discovered this whole new world inside a cell of complex things inside of it. So let's go into that a little bit. So the name they provided for the specialized structures within a cell are called organelles. And let's go through the list. So the first one is the most outer one. It's called the cell membrane. And every cell has this. It's the layer outside the cell that holds the cell together. And it's selectively permeable. And what does that mean? Well, it kind of means that it lets certain stuff in and keeps other stuff out or in. So it kind of like keeps the good guys in and the bad guys out. It can determine that, which is pretty cool, right? And then the cell wall is a stiff, rigid structure that surrounds the cell membrane to protect the cell and give it its shape. And it's only in a plant cell because it has a stiff, rigid structure, right? And the cell wall, for plants, they can't move. They stay in one spot the whole time they live, right? But for animals and humans, we are able to move because we don't have a cell wall. Cell wall are only in plant cells. Next are cytoplasm. It's a clear jelly-like substance inside the cell, and all the organelles are contained within this cytoplasm, so it kind of holds all the organelles together. Next are ribosomes. So these are the protein-making factors of the cell, and they receive directions from hereditary material to make certain proteins. So they're pretty important because proteins are pretty important to us. So you may ask, where is this hereditary material made? It's the nucleus, and it contains the cell's genetic information and directs activity done within the cell, when it's done and how it's done. And nucleus is basically like the control center. It controls everything going on in the rest of the organelles in the cell. So of course it has its own parts. So the nuclear membrane is kind of like a double protective membrane that surrounds the nucleus. And the nucleolus is a small structure that makes ribosomes and transfers them to the cytoplasm. And then chromatin is kind of the complex combination of DNA and proteins that make up the chromosomes. So those are the things inside of the nucleus. Then we have vacuoles. So these are the storage bubbles that store food, water, minerals, and waste that can be used later. And, you know, plants would have much bigger vacuoles than animals and humans do because we can, make our own food and eat our own food. But plants, their process is a little more tedious because they have to use photosynthesis and it's much more longer. So they kind of really have to store a lot of that. That's why plants have much more bigger vacuoles. And there will be a picture for all of this, so you can see later. And then a lysosome is the organelle that digests and destroys dead cells or old cell parts, as well as recycling material. So it kind of like recycles the old unused or kind of damaged material in the cell. All right, so then we have mitochondria. And this is a very important organelle because it's kind of like the cell's powerhouse and it releases energy, which is ATP, adenine triphosphate, by carrying a reaction with oxygen. So the more energy means the more mitochondria. So it's kind of like that energy boost that provides energy to all the other organelles of the cell. Then we have endoplasmic reticulum. This is the transport facility for the cell and it processes and moves materials. So there's two types of endoplasmic reticulum, for short ER. So the smooth ER is mainly making cellular products like hormones and lipids, and there's no ribosomes on this. While the rough ER has a membrane-bound ribosomes and produces proteins. So, endoplasmic reticulum kind of transports stuff and moves materials from one place to another. And the difference between smooth and rough is the smooth has no ribosomes while the rough does have ribosomes, kind of where it gets its name. Next, we have the Golgi apparatus. So this is kind of the packaging, sorting, distributing facility. It sorts the proteins and other products from the endoplasmic reticulum, then package and distributes them to where they need to go. So they're kind of like the final packaging area where they package and deliver it to different parts of the body out of the cell. And then next we have chloroplasts. And these organelles are only found in plant cells because they use photosynthesis. And these structures contain chlorophyll, which is a green pigment. And that's why plants, and leaves look green and have that color. All right, so this is a picture to sum everything we just talked about, all the cell parts. So the cell membrane, the outer thing that holds everything together, cytoplasm holding the organelles together, mitochondria, the energy boost, Golgi apparatus, packaging and everything, nucleus, the control center, and then the rough has these ribosomes and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum has no ribosomes, getting its name, and then this is the ribosome, which, makes proteins, and the lysosomes kind of is recycling area. And yeah, so two main types of organisms. So we have unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. And you know how before we talked about the cell theory where all living things are made of one or more cells. So unicellular organisms are made of only one cell that carry out all the functions needed by the organism, while multicellular organisms are composed of more than one cell and have groups of cells do different jobs or functions. So we have cells, and many cells together make tissues, and many tissues together make an organ, and many organs together make an organ system, and many organ systems together make a complete product organism. So now what are the two main types of cells? So we have prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. So prokaryotic cells are just simple cells that lack, so basically don't have a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. So it only has one cell in the organism, while eukaryotic are cells that have a nucleus and membrane-bound organisms. So basically organisms that have more than just one cell and have specialized structures. So the one we've been talking about the whole time are eukaryotic cells with all these membrane-bound organelles, while a prokaryotic doesn't have any of that. It only has a ribosome, one cell membrane, and a nucleoid. And see you guys next week. Bye.